talk a little New World Screwworm. Specifically, we talk about the cattle coming in from Mexico. That is still at a halt. But one of the I think you bring an interesting perspective. Yes, you're at the University of Tennessee, but you also have cattle in Texas and in that part of the country. So as you look at this risk and what's happening right now, what are your thoughts on the New World Screwworm and how it's impacting the cattle sector, not just in Texas, but really along the southern border?
Yeah, so it's somewhat of a blessing and a curse to be still active in agriculture and especially in the cattle side of things. And in talking with my family, I'm also the son-in-law to a veterinarian and the brother-in-law to a veterinarian in South Texas. And so when we talk about cattle and specifically New World Screwworm, it's always interesting to kind of get their perspective on things. And what they're talking about right now is that it's a real thing. Like New World Screwworm is something that could spread around South Texas. If not, if it does come across and wants to, go from host to host, it could have a large impact pretty fast. And when we start thinking about that, it's, we're in a time of cattle prices being all-time highs. It would be one of the most unfortunate things for a New World Screwworm to come in and wipe out the cattle population that we have. And so when we have those two extremes that, people are starting to think about along the border, they're essentially going to be the first cattle that get hit, right? I mean, if New World Screwworm comes, it's going to be all the cattle along the border, and those people are going to get affected the quickest and the hardest. And so from that perspective, it's how fast can it come? How fast can we get it under control? What are the protocols in case it does start spreading? Are we going to have to look at, are we going to have to look at cattle quicker or more often? And what does that look like? Does that increase our costs? And things of that nature is what the conversation is. And it's a real, problem that can become prevalent.
I would assume producers in that part of the country remain vigilant in scouting, examining, looking for any signs. And we say this to say it's not here. It is still, last reported, was in parts of Mexico, but was moving north. So, is that just, those animal health checks becoming more prevalent for producers in that part of the world?
Yeah. So, with us, it's more of, hey, we're going to start looking at the cattle more often. And, that's going to have an increased cost. Are there other ways? What other medications can we provide to an animal that can be preventative? But there's also a cost associated with that. And, up to a certain extent, cattle are not looked at like they once were back when we first had New World Screwworm, a long time ago. And so it's like, do we need to start working on protocols for animals? And do people need to start thinking about that? Another thing that, I kind of thought about that I heard a comment was, if we shut down the border, just do producers in Mexico stop doing preventative things for New World Screwworm? Because if they're not able to send the cattle across to Texas or Arizona or, across to the U.S., well, then why would they do anything that can, be preventative for New World Screwworm? And so those are kind of things in the conversations that I hear about that I'm like, that maybe there are some unintended consequences of that as well. And so I think it's such a interesting conversation that I guess it's a blessing and a curse also as an economist to be, in the position to be thinking about it. But in the grand scheme of things, these are people's, livelihoods when it comes to the cattle industry that, could be at risk and be at risk pretty quick. And so those are, it's not just something simple as, it's another insect. I mean, these are things, New World Screwworm could have some long lasting and immediate impact on producers' bottom line and profitability.